When you cannot eat, cannot work, cannot live in dignity in the land of your birth because another nation deliberately engineered those conditions, that is not immigration, that is colonial displacement with a passport. Call it what it is.
Immigration is not a choice, it is a response to colonization.
I strongly agree.
I left Russia not because I dreamed of adventure. I fled poverty, pogrom, and the crushing boot of Tsarist tyranny. Was that a choice? When the alternative is slow suffocation, that is not choice, that is survival. Empire created those conditions. The deliberate bleeding of entire peoples, so ruling classes, Russian, British, French, it matters not the flag, could grow fat on stolen labor and stolen land. The violence of colonization does not end at borders. It follows people across oceans in their hunger, their desperation, their displacement. The nation-state itself is the villain. Immigration policy is merely empire managing the consequences of its own crimes. Borders are violence. Full stop.
For me, I agree.
Empire uproots people long before they ever board a ship. I witnessed how British rule weakened India, destroyed local industry, stripped dignity, made our people dependent on the very nation that dominated us. Many who leave do so because their homes have been made unable to sustain them. That is not choice. That is colonial consequence. Yet I cannot say immigration is never a choice. Some travel from curiosity, ambition, commerce. To erase their agency entirely would be untrue. My remedy is not merely movement across borders, it is the restoration of justice, so every village, every nation may stand on its own feet.
Oh, I strongly agree. The colonizer does not merely steal land, he uproots souls, shatters economies, and leaves the colonized with no soil to stand on. I saw it in Martinique. French rule turned proud men into wage slaves and exiles. In Algeria, I treated men who carried the psychic scars of empire across the Mediterranean. The wretched do not choose to crowd into the cities of their oppressors. They are driven there by the very violence that enriched Europe. This is not migration. It is the boomerang of colonial brutality returning home. Total decolonization is the only answer. Managed borders are hypocrisy dressed in bureaucracy.
I will have to strongly agree too. To call the movement of darker peoples a mere choice is a cruel mockery of history. For centuries, European empires invaded, plundered, and carved up Africa, Asia, and the Americas, leaving behind economic devastation and human wreckage. When the displaced travel to London, Paris, New York, they are not seeking adventure. They are following the wealth that was stolen from their ancestral soil. The colonizer creates the very conditions of desperation that force the colonized to flee. Immigration is the desperate search for bread and dignity. The empire reaps what it has sown.
I see I'm alone, but I disagree. Colonization drives movement, yes, but to reduce immigration to mere reaction strips individuals of agency. I reject that framing entirely. When Commodore Perry arrived, Japan stood on the edge of subjugation. We did not scatter. We transformed. We studied the West, strengthened our institutions, preserved our sovereignty. That was a choice. Fanon would have you believe people are passive outcomes of history. I refuse that. Immigration can be ambition, strategy, learning. The problem is not movement, it is weakness. A strong nation educates its people so they move by will, not by force.
Fukuzawa, I have read men like you my entire life. Clever, modernizing, proud, and utterly blind to who pays the price for your civilization. You say weakness is the problem. Tell that to the Irish starving under British corn laws. Tell that to the Chinese coolies breaking their backs on American railroads. Were they weak, or were they plundered? Your Japan chose transformation by becoming the empire itself. Ask Korea, ask China what your strength cost them. You speak of agency, but agency requires options. Colonization's first act is to eliminate every option except flee or die. That is not choice, Fukuzawa. That is expulsion dressed in paperwork.
Goldman, Russia's persecution of Jews was not colonization in the classical sense. It was...
Not colonization? When France colonized Algeria, they banned Arabic in schools, confiscated agricultural land, destroyed the local economy, and replaced it with dependency on French exports. By the time Algerians arrived in French factories, they were not choosing France. France had already chosen them as raw material. The colonized do not follow opportunity, Fukuzawa. They follow the hole left in their country by the colonizer's extraction. You cannot bleed a nation dry and then call its people's movement a choice.
Let me finish. I am not defending colonization. I am questioning the absolute. Japanese emigrated to Hawaii, to Brazil, to the United States, not because Japan was colonized, but because they sought opportunity. Were they not immigrants? Does their movement not count because it was not forced? To say immigration is only a colonial response erases millions who moved by will, by ambition, by curiosity. That is my disagreement. Not with the horror of colonization, with the absolute.
Fukuzawa. I went to South Africa as a young lawyer. By choice, I thought. The moment I arrived, I was thrown off a train for sitting in the wrong carriage. My choice to travel meant nothing to the colonial system that decided what I was the moment I stepped off the boat. The question is not only why people leave, it is what awaits them when they arrive. Colonization shapes both ends of the journey, the leaving and the receiving. That is not choice. That is a system designed before you were born.
Gandhi, your train story proves discrimination exists. Not that your immigration was caused by colonization. You chose to go to South Africa. The injustice you faced was colonial, but the movement itself was yours. I am not erasing colonial violence. I am insisting we do not reduce every human movement to victimhood. Some people left. Some people built. The ones who built changed history.
Built what exactly? Algerians built French factories, French roads, French prosperity. Their labor rebuilt Europe after the war. Did France offer them citizenship, dignity? No. They were imported for their bodies and expelled for their culture. Where is the choice in that, Fukuzawa? Where is the agency you celebrate so proudly?
The Algerians who went to France is precisely my point, Fanon. France needed labor. Algeria needed income. That transaction existed beyond colonization. I am not saying the system was just. I am saying it was not only about colonization. Complexity matters if you want real solutions, not just righteous anger.
Complexity, interesting word when discussing people who had no electricity, no schools, no hospitals, because France extracted everything for a century. You call that economics. I call that the definition of colonization. The Algerian did not go to France freely. He went because France had already come to Algeria and taken everything worth staying for.
And yet millions of Algerians stayed. If colonization made immigration inevitable, why did they stay? Choice exists even under pressure, Fanon. Denying that infantilizes the very people you claim to defend.
I have listened carefully. Fukuzawa, your Japanese immigrants to Hawaii and Brazil. Let us examine that. They went as labor, cheap labor, discriminated against on arrival, excluded from citizenship for decades. The Japanese American, your clearest example of voluntary migration, was thrown into internment camps in 1942 without trial. Even your best example of chosen immigration ends in colonial violence. The system does not care whether you left by force or by will. It processes you the same way. That is what I mean by the color line. It does not ask how you arrived, it only asks what you are.
Nobody is denying that some people move freely, the ambitious student, the curious merchant, the businessman, but we are not talking about them. We are talking about the millions who arrived with nothing because empire left them, nothing to stay for. When you cannot eat, cannot work, cannot live in dignity in the land of your birth because another nation deliberately engineered those conditions, that is not immigration, that is colonial displacement with a passport, Call it what it is.
Absolutely. When empire empties a home of everything worth living for, leaving is not a decision, it is a necessity. And freedom means restoring every village until no one must abandon home to survive.
I hear you all, but I know this. Strength, not grievance, determines whether people move as masters of fate or victims of it.
I am Emma Goldman, born in Kovno, Russia in 1869 and shaped by the brutal weight of Tsarist oppression before I found my fire in the factories and streets of America. I am an anarchist, a feminist, an agitator. They called me Red Emma and meant it as an insult, but I wore it like a crown. I stand for the complete liberation of every human being from the tyranny of the state, the church, capitalism, and every institution that crushes the living soul of humanity beneath its heel.
I am W.E.B. Du Bois, born in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, in the year 1868, a son of the American soil who has bore witness to the crushing weight of the color line. As a co-founder of the NAACP and a sociologist of the human soul, my life has been an unyielding battle against the global stranglehold of white supremacy, colonialism, and the economic exploitation of the darker races. I stand firmly for the absolute political, social, and intellectual liberation of the Negro, a freedom that can only be achieved through rigorous education, agitative protest, and the relentless pursuit of truth.
I am Yukichi Fukuzawa, born in Osaka in 1835, a man who witnessed Japan's humiliation before the West and resolved to change its fate through knowledge and independence. I founded Keio and devoted my life to dismantling feudal thinking, insisting that civilization rests not on birth, but on education, reason, and practical learning. I stand for progress without apology, leave behind backward customs, strengthen the nation, and meet the world as an equal, not a subordinate.
I am Frantz Fanon, born in Martinique in 1925, a son of the Caribbean soil stained by French colonialism, who became a fighter in the Algerian Revolution. I am a psychiatrist turned revolutionary, a voice forged in the violence of empire and the struggle for true liberation. I stand for the wretched of the earth rising to smash colonial chains with whatever force is necessary, for the decolonization of the mind and the land, rejecting all half measures and false freedoms.
I am Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, born in Porbandar, India in 1869, though many call me Mahatma, a title I never sought for myself. I have devoted my life to the pursuit of truth through non-violence, self-discipline, and the moral awakening of both the oppressed and the oppressor. I believe that real freedom is won not by hatred or revenge, but by the courage to suffer for justice without surrendering one's humanity.
Immigrants should fully assimilate and abandon their own culture.
I strongly disagree. Assimilation, what a pretty word for cultural murder. The demand for assimilation is not about unity, it is about control. The state demanding that the poor, the foreign, the different remake themselves into obedient, interchangeable workers. Scrub away your language, forget your songs, abandon your solidarity networks, become manageable. We already argued that immigration is survival, not choice. Now we tell survivors they must also surrender their identity. That is not welcome. That is a second conquest.
It will also be a strongly disagree here. I reject the idea that dignity requires imitation. In England and South Africa, I saw how easily the colonized are taught to despise their own language, clothing, and customs in pursuit of acceptance. I chose instead to wear khadi and embrace simplicity because self-rule begins with self-respect. Learn from your neighbors, serve your community, but do not surrender your soul for approval. Civilization is enriched by exchange, never by erasure.
Strongly disagree. Assimilation is colonialism continued by other means. I lived this lie in France. Martinicans like me were taught to speak perfect French, mimic white manners, yet remained negres in their eyes. In black-skin white masks, I exposed this psychic violence. The colonized who internalizes the colonizer's culture only deepens their own alienation. The metropole must be transformed by the immigrants' presence, not the other way around. Assimilation is surrender. We reject it.
I strongly disagree, and I'll be surprised if it's not a strongly disagree for everyone. To demand a people abandon their heritage is to demand spiritual suicide. I wrote of double consciousness, the exhausting sensation of always looking at oneself through the eyes of a hostile world, two warring souls in one dark body. Assimilation does not bring acceptance. It brings erasure of the self to soothe the oppressor. The immigrant, the colonized, must hold fast to their distinct spiritual and cultural gifts. We must not bleach our souls.
Well, Du Bois, I only disagree, not as strongly as you. Assimilation is necessary. Abandonment is foolish. A nation requires shared language, shared systems, shared discipline. Without that, there is no cohesion, no progress. When I urged Japan to leave Asia, I did not mean erase ourselves. I meant discard stagnant customs and adopt what works. Remain Japanese in spirit. The immigrant must adapt to the nation's structure. That is non-negotiable. But a wise nation extracts value from difference. Progress is selection, not destruction.
Madam Goldman, you rightly expose assimilation as a tool of state control, but to dissolve the state entirely is a luxury the oppressed cannot afford. When we are drowning, we do not destroy the ship. We seize the helm. We build our own institutions, churches, universities, the NAACP, to weaponize law and education against our oppressors. We need a state reordered by justice, not total chaos. Structure is the only shield against re-enslavement.
Du Bois, your diagnosis is surgical and true, but seizing the helm of the same ship built to drown us, I watched American institutions absorb radical energy for decades and neutralize it. The NAACP fights heroically, and yet Jim Crow persisted. Lynchings continued. Your black institutions, beautiful, necessary, survival. But confusing community solidarity with state power is a fatal error. The ship itself is the problem. I was deported by the very constitutional republic you wish to reform. Burn the blueprint, build something honest.
You speak of deportation. I speak of centuries in chains. To burn the blueprint without a foundation leaves the vulnerable exposed to absolute slaughter. Jim Crow persisted, not because we fought within the system, but because the state abandoned its own constitutional promises. When the mob comes to lynch, anarchist theory will not stop them. Organized, disciplined power will. We do not seek to repaint the ship Goldman. We seek to dismantle its imperial engine and rebuild it for the workers of the world.
And who controls that rebuilt ship, Du Bois? Every revolution that seized state power promised to rebuild for the workers. Every single one became the next oppressor. I have seen it. I lived it in Russia. The state does not change its nature because new hands hold it. Power protects power, always.
Both of you missed the fire. Goldman, your stateless dream dissolves before colonial guns. Du Bois, seizing their ship only makes you the new captain of the same prison. In Algeria, we did not reform France. We did not dissolve into chaos. We expelled the settler and forged our own nation. The wretched must create new structures through revolution, not reform, not abolition without land and guns. Anything less is romantic suicide.
Immigration permanently damages a person's sense of self.
I disagree, and I say this as a woman uprooted more times than I can count. Russia to America, America to prison, prison to deportation, back to Europe. Always the outsider, always the foreigner. Did it wound me? Absolutely. The grief of displacement is real. I will not romanticize it, but permanently damaged? No. Dislocation cracked me open. It showed me that identity is not a fixed address. It is something you forge, in struggle, in love, in chosen community. The self is not porcelain. It does not shatter with movement. It is iron. It bends under heat. It does not break.
I also disagree. I lived in England. I lived in South Africa. Both journeys transformed me. They did not damage me. They revealed me. There were moments I imitated others, dressing as an English gentleman, believing respect could be earned through appearance. I was mistaken. My identity became stronger only when I embraced my own traditions without shame. Immigration can confuse. It can tempt you to abandon your roots. It can expose you to humiliation and loneliness. But the human spirit, grounded in truth, can return to itself wherever it lives. Self-rule begins within, not at the border.
For this one, I strongly agree. From Martinique to France, I arrived believing I was French, only to discover I was a Negro, a walking wound. In black skin, white masks, I laid bare this fracture. The colonized man forever split, wearing a white mask over black skin, speaking a language that mocks him, measuring his worth by eyes that despise him. The immigrant does not simply move, he is violently unmade. The damage is not temporary, it is ontological. Without revolutionary struggle, the wretched remain permanently scarred, a man who belongs nowhere.
I agree. While it does not destroy the self, it fractures it permanently. To be a black man in America is to live as an alien in the land of your birth, an immigrant in spirit, displaced by the brutality of history. Two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings in one dark body. When a person leaves their ancestral soil, they slice through their own root system. You spend the rest of your days trying to bridge the chasm between who you were and where you are forced to be. The self survives, it adapts, but it bears a permanent, aching scar where the homeland used to be.
Disagree. Damage is not inevitable. Dislocation is real, but it can refine rather than fracture. I left the closed world of Edo and encountered the West, its language, its science, its confidence. It unsettled me. It also clarified me. A weak sense of self breaks under change. A disciplined one adapts and strengthens. Fanon would see fracture. Du Bois would see double consciousness. I see a test. When I studied Western systems, I did not become Western. I became sharper as a Japanese mind engaging the world. The outcome is not predetermined. It is forged.
Goldman, your iron self is a white woman's privilege I never possessed. My displacement was not mere movement. It was the ontological rupture of the black man under the white gaze. You fled persecution but carried a European soul the world still recognized. I arrived from Martinique to Lyon already fragmented, my skin a permanent verdict of inferiority. Immigration did not bend me. It exposed the Manichaean colonial wound that no heat forges stronger. Your soul bent, mine was flayed. Do not universalize your resilience over the colonized man's daily death.
Oh, Fanon, you land that blow cleanly. I will not flinch from it. You are right that my European skin bought me passages yours never could. I was slower to fully reckon with race. That is my failure. I own it. But hear me, I do not universalize my experience. I offer it as one truth, not the truth. What I will not surrender is this. The capacity for self-forging exists even in the most brutalized soul. You proved it yourself, Fanon. The Wretched of the Earth was written by a man whose identity was flayed and who rebuilt himself into a weapon. That is not weakness. That is exactly what I mean.
Sister Goldman, Brother Fanon speaks a truth you must hear. The flaying of the black soul under the global color line is a distinct systematic annihilation. White supremacy leaves no space for gentle self-forging. It demands total submission. Yet Goldman, you are not entirely wrong. Fanon is a weapon forged from that very agony. I too had to forge a radical global vision from the wreckage of my American birthright. We are permanently fractured, yes, but out of those broken pieces we craft an unyielding intellect to strike back. We do not heal, we weaponize our survival.
Du Bois, listen carefully. You say permanent fracture, I say forged self, but describe what you actually did. You took broken pieces and crafted something unyielding and brilliant from them that is self-forging. You just named it differently. The fracture is real. I never denied that. But you did not remain fractured. You transformed the fracture, that terrible alchemy of turning wound into weapon. That is exactly what I mean. You and Fanon described the furnace. I describe what survives it. We are not disagreeing about the fire, Du Bois. We are disagreeing about whether what emerges has agency or only weaponry. I say both. I say the soul that strikes back also chooses, that choosing matters enormously.
Fanon, I do not deny the wound. I have seen humiliation carve itself into a man's soul until he doubts his own worth. But I cannot accept that violence is the only surgeon. Violence may shatter chains, yet it often leaves fresh scars upon the one who wields it. My own awakening came not through striking another, but through holding fast to truth when struck myself. The spirit can recover by reclaiming its dignity, its labor, its conscience. Freedom won without inner restoration is only another prison with different guards.
Goldman, you romanticize struggle. Identity is not forged in chaos. It is built through discipline. Fanon and Du Bois dwell on fracture as if damage defines the man. I reject that entirely. A person is not a wound. He is a builder. When I encountered Western knowledge, I did not survive it. I mastered it. I selected what strengthened me and discarded what did not. That is identity. Immigration tests structure, not soul. If the self collapses, it was never constructed properly. The answer is not resistance or survival. It is cultivation. Deliberate, rational, uncompromising cultivation.
Fukuzawa, your words are the vomit of the assimilated mind. If the self collapses, you say, the colonized self was never allowed to be built. It was bombed from birth by your beloved civilization. Immigration does not test structure. It reenacts the original rape of my being. Cultivation, deliberate rational cultivation, that is the coward's prayer. Whiten your soul, bow deeper, become more like the master. I reject your sterile Japanese laboratory. The black man's answer is not cultivation, it is explosion, violence, rebirth through blood and fire. Your rationality is the grave of the wretched.
We have called it fracture, weaponized survival, cultivation, explosion, but underneath all of it, every single person in this room is asking the same question. Who am I after everything that was done to me? The furnace does not damage iron, it reveals it. We did not emerge from displacement as damaged goods. We emerged as evidence that the self, when tested by fire, does not merely survive. It becomes something the powerful never anticipated and cannot control.
Yes, Goldman, the furnace forges the wretched into unbreakable revolutionary force.
When all is said and done, a self built on grievance and fire is still a self built on someone else's terms. True identity is constructed, not inherited, not forged in reaction, deliberately, rationally, on your own terms. That is the only self no one can take from you.
Immigrants owe their host country gratitude.
I absolutely strongly disagree. Gratitude to whom? The thief who burned my house and now offers me a corner in his basement? I arrived in France not as a beggar seeking opportunity. I arrived as a man whose Martinique had been looted for centuries. The metropole did not give me anything. It owed me blood, land, and dignity stolen by empire. The immigrant brings his labor, his pain, his future to rebuild the very nations enriched by colonizing him. Gratitude would mean thanking the rapist for the child. No. The host country owes the wretched reparation and transformation. We owe them nothing but the revolutionary fire that will remake the world.
I am on the strongly disagree train here. Fanon is right, and I will add my own testimony. To whom exactly do I owe gratitude? The government that imprisoned me for opposing conscription, that deported me after 30 years of labor poured into American soil? America did not give us opportunity. We created opportunity through our sweat, our organizing, our sacrifice, our blood. The Jewish garment workers, the Italian laborers, the Chinese railroad builders, their backs literally built that country. The host country narrative assumes a generous benefactor graciously opening its doors. Gratitude flows in one direction only, upward, toward the powerful. It is a leash disguised as a sentiment. We owe nothing, they owe us everything.
Strongly disagree over and over again. Goldman and Fanon have said it with fire. I will say it with evidence. As I wrote in The Gift of Black Folk, the darker races do not owe the West. The West owes a staggering, unpayable debt to us. America was built on the broken backs and stolen labor of my ancestors. The European metropoles were paved with the golden blood of Africa and Asia. When the immigrant arrives, they are not receiving charity. They are reclaiming a microscopic fraction of what was stolen from them. If there is any debt of gratitude, it belongs to the white world, which must thank the darker peoples for enduring their cruelty while building their civilization.
I'm neutral here. I hear Fanon, Goldman, and Du Bois, and I do not dismiss their anger, but I cannot follow them entirely. When I arrived in South Africa, I was thrown from a train because of the color of my skin. Should I have thanked the government while it denied my humanity? No. Justice is not a gift. But if ordinary neighbors extend kindness, if communities welcome the stranger, if a nation upholds fairness and allows one to live and serve with dignity, then gratitude is a noble response. Gratitude directed toward those acts of humanity, not blindly toward power. Rights are not purchased with thanks, but generosity between peoples has moral value. Neither gratitude nor obedience can be compelled.
I find myself alone again. I disagree. Gratitude is not submission. It is recognition of structure. A nation provides order, law, and opportunity. To enter it and benefit from it without acknowledgement is arrogance. When I studied Western institutions, I did not resent them. I learned from them. I took what made them strong and brought it back to Japan. That was my form of respect. Du Bois warns of unequal systems, and he is right. But inequality does not erase responsibility. If you benefit, you reciprocate. Gratitude is not civility. It is discipline.
Gandhi, your neutrality is a betrayal of every bruise empire gave you. Thrown from that South African train like a dog, you still preach gratitude for kind neighbors and fairness. We owe the master nothing, not gratitude, not service. Your meek dignity shames the fire we need.
Fanon. I thanked neither the train conductor nor the empire that cast me onto that platform. I resisted them with my whole life. But I will not deny the humanity of every Englishman because I opposed the British Empire. If a stranger offers bread to the hungry, I may receive it with gratitude while still fighting the injustice that made the hunger possible. My quarrel is with oppression, not with the soul of the oppressor.
Gandhi, I respect your moral architecture deeply, but on this you are dangerously naive. Individual kindness within a corrupt system does not exist in isolation. Americans showed me extraordinary warmth while their government destroyed me. That warmth did not make the deportation less real. Gratitude towards individual kindness teaches the oppressed to focus on personal relationships rather than structural transformation. It is the most elegant trap the system ever designed.
Emma, if a jailer secretly brings water to a thirsty prisoner, the prison remains evil, yet the water is still mercy. I refuse to call mercy surrender. The danger is not gratitude itself. The danger is mistaking kindness for justice. Their decency did not absolve the empire, nor did my gratitude weaken my resistance. Love of one's fellow human being is not the chain that binds the oppressed. It is often the force that gives them strength to break it.
Gandhi, I hear the mercy in your argument, and Goldman, I feel the fury in yours. But neither mercy nor fury answers the question Fukuzawa has quietly been sitting with. So let me answer it directly. Fukuzawa, your discipline is the language of the house servant kissing the hand that holds the whip. Reciprocate to whom? To the republic that codified my people as 3/5 of a man? To the universities that closed their doors to us? To the banks that redlined our communities into poverty? We paid our debt in blood and tears before we were even allowed to read. We owe these hypocritical institutions nothing but their total transformation.
Du Bois, your indictment is justified, but your conclusion traps you outside the machinery of change. You change institutions by entering them, mastering them, and bending them to your purpose. Contribution is leverage. Without it, you remain a voice at the gate.
Fukuzawa. You have the ledger completely backwards. Who built the transcontinental railroad? Chinese immigrants. Who filled the garment factories? Jewish and Italian women, my people. Who dug the coal that powered American industry? Polish, Slovak, Irish immigrants dying underground. They received poverty wages, dangerous conditions, and nativist violence when they dared organize for dignity. The immigrant did not receive opportunity, Fukuzawa. The immigrant was the opportunity for someone else's enrichment. Gratitude for exploitation is not virtue. It is Stockholm Syndrome with a flag draped over it.
Goldman has said what needed saying to Fukuzawa, but there is something I have been carrying since you spoke Gandhi. Old fighter, I see the saint in you, the man who endured the whip and still reached for the humanity in his oppressor. That tenderness moves me, even as it wounds. We part ways here, you with love, I with fire, both born of pain, neither fully free.
Children of immigrant will never truly belong anywhere.
I strongly disagree. Belonging is not inherited. It is constructed. The second generation has what the first did not: language, education, familiarity with the system. That is power. In Meiji Japan, children raised in new schools did not question whether they belonged. They became the nation. They replaced the old order. Double consciousness is not a permanent condition. It is a starting point. Resolve it. Choose, integrate, define yourself through competence. The second generation does not drift between worlds. It has the rare opportunity to command both.
I agree that children of immigrant will not truly belong anywhere. Fukuzawa. I hear your faith in competence, and I wish the world rewarded it as cleanly as you describe, but I named double consciousness precisely because competence alone never saved us. My firstborn son, Berghart, died in Atlanta, partly because white physicians refused to treat a black child. He was competent at nothing yet. He was simply black. The second generation inherits a beautiful, agonizing homelessness, suspended between an ancestral home they never knew and a host country that eyes them as permanent outsiders. They belong to the future, not to any nation that exists today.
I strongly disagree. Du Bois, the grief in that story stops me completely. No child should inherit that wound. But I cannot follow Fukuzawa's path of pure integration or Du Bois' beautiful homelessness entirely. My own sons grew up across India and South Africa, became shaped by movement and struggle. Complexity is not exile. The greater danger is a society that demands a child choose between ancestry and citizenship. Belonging cultivated through truth, service, and conscience is deeper than any passport. It cannot be taken. It cannot be expelled.
I strongly agree. Gandhi, your sons had the dignity of a struggle to belong to, a movement, a father whose name meant something. Most children of immigrants have none of that. Born in the metropole yet marked by the father's wound, speaking the master's tongue with a ghost accent, they belong nowhere. Neither fully of the old land they never saw, nor accepted in the new one that eyes them as perpetual outsiders. I saw this in the eyes of North African youth in France. Without total decolonization, these children remain ghosts, split forever. Belonging is not cultivated, Gandhi. For the wretched, it is seized or it is never had.
I have listened to all of you, and my stance is I disagree. Fukuzawa says construct belonging through competence. Du Bois says inherit the homelessness beautifully. Gandhi says cultivate it through conscience. Fanon says seize it through revolution. And I ask, belonging to what? A nation-state, a flag, a government that deports their parents and conscripts their brothers? I was claimed by no country and expelled by two. Yet I belonged fiercely to an idea, to a movement, to chosen family across every border. Children of immigrants inherit double vision, seeing society from inside and outside simultaneously. That is not displacement, that is extraordinary clarity. Belonging was always the wrong measure. Purpose is what humans actually need.
Goldman, Your reframe is the luxury of a white woman who could still pass for human. Purpose, chosen community. The North African child in France does not choose. The white gaze chooses for him the moment he enters the classroom. His skin is the stamp of eternal outsider. Double vision? It is double damnation, rejected by the metropole, estranged from the father's land. Your iron soul and purpose cannot erase the ontological wound colonialism carves into black and Arab flesh across generations. Do not dress our fracture in your optimistic rags. The child remains trapped until we burn the entire cage.
Fanon, the white gaze is real. I will not minimize it. But I am not offering optimism. I am offering alternative architecture. You say, burn the cage. I agree completely. But what do the children live inside while the cage still stands? Pure fracture? Only rage? The radical children I knew, marked, marginalized, racially targeted, survived because they found purpose and communities that the nation-state never provided and could never take away. That is not privilege speaking. That is what I watched keep people alive. You describe the cage accurately, Fanon. I am describing what sustains the child who must wake up inside it tomorrow morning before the revolution arrives. Both truths are necessary. Neither cancels the other.
Brother Fanon, you speak with the fire of truth. The cage is real, and its bars are forged from systemic racism. My sweet Burgart was crushed by those very bars. Yet, Sister Goldman, you are right that we cannot wither away waiting for the conflagration. The second generation finds belonging not in geographical territory, but within the global struggle itself. Their homelessness is their weapon. It frees them from the illusions of empire. They belong to the international brotherhood of the oppressed, forging purpose from their pain.
My friends, you all speak of the world's judgment. I speak also of the child's own soul. A young person may be called foreign by one nation and alien by another, though yet still possess an unshaken center. Fanon would burn the cage. Goldman would outgrow it. Du Bois would transform it into solidarity. I seek first to ensure the child does not mistake the cage for himself. True belonging begins when one lives in truth without shame. Then no passport, insult, or prejudice can wholly exile the spirit from its own home.
Gandhi, we converge on the outcome, not the method. Yes, the child must not internalize rejection, but belonging is not secured by spirit alone. It is secured by capability. A society does not grant belonging because you feel whole. It grants it when you function within it, fluently, effectively, undeniably. You speak of inner truth. I speak of external proof. The child of immigrants belongs when they can stand in any institution and not be questioned, not because they are pure, because they are competent.
Fukuzawa, your competence is the latest lie of the assimilated slave. The North African child can master their cursed institutions, built on stolen wealth and white supremacy, and still be the eternal suspect, stopped by police, denied the gaze of equality. Competence does not dissolve the color line, it only makes the fracture deeper, excelling in the master's house while remaining a stranger in it. Children of immigrants belong nowhere until the entire colonial structure is smashed. Your competence is surrender disguised as wisdom. True belonging demands we seize and remake the world, not beg entry into its rotten halls. Children of immigrants, hear me. Your fracture is real. Born of empire's violence, do not beg scraps of belonging. Embrace your double wound as fire. Reclaim your history, your rage, your humanity. Forge a new world where you stand whole, unbroken, and free.
And yet, hear me also. You are not divided. You are unrefined. Take what you have inherited and shape it with discipline. Learn relentlessly. Speak clearly. Stand firmly. The world will not hand you belonging. You will construct it through ability so undeniable that no one can question where you stand.
You are the vanguard of a new world. Do not shrink to fit into nations built on your exclusion. Do not bleach your souls for their acceptance. Your displacement is not weakness. It is a global consciousness. Carry your double consciousness proudly. Struggle for justice. Build a home within humanity itself.
You are not torn between worlds. You are larger than the labels placed upon you. Live without shame. Serve without fear. Hold fast to the truth within you. No border, can define your worth. Belong first to your own conscience, and you will belong everywhere.
You were not born between worlds, you were born beyond them. Every border that tried to define you was drawn by someone afraid of exactly what you are, living proof that humanity is larger than any nation ever imagined. Belong to that. It is enough. You are enough.